and welcome to our third episode of Seen It First, sponsored by Fictionary, your story editing software. In this series, we sit down with award-winning best-selling authors to talk about first scenes, explore writing craft, and celebrate the stories that thrill and inspire us all. I'm James Gallagher, a Fictionary certified story coach editor and a copy editor, and tonight I am very excited to welcome one of my favorite authors, Rio Youers. Rio is the British Fantasy and Sunburst Award nominated author of such novels as Halcyon, Lola on Fire, and No Second Chances, and whose novel The Forgotten Girl was a finalist for the Arthur Ellis Award for Best Crime Novel. The hardcover of that also has one of my favorite covers. Rio also authored the graphic adaptation of Stephen and Owen King's Sleeping Beauties and Refrigerator Full of Heads, the sequel to Joe Hill's Basket Full of Heads. I also wanted to read this quote because it's never a bad time to remember the great Peter Straub, who passed this past year, an absolute master who said of Youers, "Youers is one of the most vital, most exciting young talents to come along in this decade." What else needs to be said? That's a hell of a quote. I don't buy a lot of hardcovers these days, but Rio Youers is always an automatic buy for me. So I'm personally thrilled to have him here tonight. Rio, welcome, and how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, James. What a great introduction. Everything you said was 100% true, and that's always good. No, it's great to be here in all seriousness. Yeah, we've been in contact quite a bit over the years on social media, so it's good to finally chat with you and to chat with your listeners here. Thrilled to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And for everyone here, for the next half hour, we're going to talk to Rio about some of his projects and then look at the first scene of Lola on Fire in the Fictionary software. And with luck, there will be little time at the end for some questions. And please feel free to drop questions in the chat also at any time. Rio, if you'd like to get things started just by telling everyone what you have out now. I think you just recently had a paperback drop for one of your books, No Second Chances, and what you're working on.
Sure, yeah. As you said, I had a novel come out last year, No Second Chances. It came out in hardcover through William Morrow, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. It was termed by the press as a Hollywood noir. I just saw it as a balls to the wall action thriller with a lot of heart and soul. It's about a washed-up actor who's basically accused of murdering his wife, and his career hits the skids, and he hooks up with this young wannabe starlet who gets into trouble herself, and they sort of bumble their way through the book, trying to avoid peril at every turn. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to write. The reception has been great to it. Stephen King gave me a killer blurb, which is right there on the front cover, which is exactly where it should be when you get a Stephen King blurb. And yeah, that dropped in paperback last month, I think. God, this year is going so quick. It's March already. My God. So yeah, that came out in February. It's available in paperback, a trade paperback. So yeah, go check it out. It's available everywhere books are sold. Currently working on a new novel, a new action thriller. It's called The Bang Bang Sisters. Nearly finished the first draft, actually, so we're rounding the final bend, heading towards the big finale. Anybody who's read my books knows I like a big finale. And so yeah, so it's going well. I pitched it to my editor as Charlie's Angels by way of Quentin Tarantino. That gives you an idea of what to expect in that one. Lots of kick-ass action.
Yeah, I saw that, and I am very excited for that. And I understand that that is going to be the first in a new 2-book deal with HarperCollins. So congratulations on that. That's great news. And I hope there are many more of those deals in the future. I mean, HarperCollins, that's the dream, right? And so
yeah, it is. It's been a long time in the making. This certainly wasn't something that happened overnight for me. Lots of years, a ton of rejections. I was actually just doing just writing an interview for a publisher in Germany, and they were asking about like my road to publication, and I was mentioning that I started out with a typewriter. That's how long ago I started writing. And my first, query letters to agents and editors were typed out, and then you had to mail them off. I don't know if anybody here went through that as well. I see some people nodding. And that's how, and you have to wait sometimes 3-4 months to even get a response, which was invariably a thanks but no thanks. It was always tough and always disheartening. But every now and again, you'd have an agent say, "Oh, actually, that sounds pretty good. Why didn't you send me the first 3 chapters?" And then you throw it in the mail again and mail it off, and it would take a week to arrive. And yeah, so it's been a long journey, but I've stuck at it. And the reasons I've stuck at it is not because I always felt I was getting closer, although that is true. It's more because I just love what I do. I love to write stories, and honestly, I do it whether I was published or not, because it's what feeds my soul. So the fact that I get to make money doing it, and that I have a readership, it's icing on the cake, but I'd still do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I want to get back to your those big publisher novels in a bit, but I also wanted to mention an earlier work, just to give it some love. And there's not a tell everyone here, there's not a bad place to start if you're picking up your first Rio Youers book, and certainly one of his early ones, Westlake Soul, has a real cult following. And just for those not familiar with it, I thought maybe you'd like to say a few words about it and why it, continues to, resonate strongly with people.
Yeah, it still resonates strongly with me, actually. It was a book that sort of came, I still can't quite believe I wrote it, actually. Because I got the idea like many years ago, and I thought I'm not the writer to do that story justice. And then I thought I'd try it, and everything happened almost magically. Like the voice came to me magically. Even the idea originally came to me on the edge of a dream, actually, in that sort of moment between being asleep and being awake. I heard his voice, and he just spoke to me, and I just leapt out of bed and wrote the idea down. It was quite, never had anything like that happen before. It was almost like it wanted to be, to be made, this idea to come out into the world. So it's the story of Westlake Soul. That's his name. He's a surfer dude, just a regular young kid, and he has a terrible accident while he's surfing, and he goes into a permanent vegetative state. So he has no response to stimulus. He can't walk, he can't talk, he can't communicate with anybody in any way. But on the inside, he's developed the mind of a super genius. So he can astral project anywhere he wants to go. He can communicate with his dog. He has some really good conversations with his dog, and he can read people's minds. And so what the basic concept is, I'm sure you've heard the theory that we only use 10% of our brains, that our brains are like icebergs, and only the top 10% is above the surface, and the rest of it is underneath. And that's kind of like our brains. We use 10%, and that 90% of our brain power is never used. Well, Westlake flips the iceberg. So he doesn't use the 10% that we all use, the walking, the talking, that sort of stuff that we all take for granted. But he has access to the 90%, which is pretty magical stuff. So that was the idea. Like I said, it wasn't a book that I thought I had the skill set to write, but something weird. I'm not, despite some of the stuff I write, I'm really not. I don't believe too much in the supernatural or the paranormal. I know I write about it. But that was close to a paranormal experience, because that book just poured out of me in a way that I can't really explain. And I look at it now and think, oh my God, like, not like, oh, it's so good, I can't believe I read that, but the subject matter and everything about it was just so challenging that to see the book on the shelf with my name on the cover, those two things don't add up to me. So it was an incredible experience. Hasn't happened since. The books the books since have all been, I like to think, good in their own way, but the writing process for them has been more of a normal thing. You get up, you go to work, you put in your words for the day, and then you edit, and you do the same the next day. But that was a different process, and it's for that reason. I mean, and just look at the reviews. Like, it's universally regarded as as you know, a lot of people have read it and said it's their favorite book of all time. It changed their life, and you know, it's weird. I don't know. I didn't write it. I'm sure I didn't. Somebody else was just speaking through me.
Well, I'm really glad I asked that, because that was wild to hear. I mean, that gave me chills hearing you talk about that. So there's also a special edition of that I need to get. But yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
Westlake saw, and it's tough to find. It's out of print with the original publisher, but there is that special edition that, you know, I'm sure you're just about to talk about, and then there are a few copies left, and that's it. Then it's gone forever. You can get it
Yeah,
on audiobook still, but yeah, that's it then.
yeah. But it's a beautiful book, and I wanted to talk a little bit about your graphic novel adaptations, which I actually hadn't read until the lead up to this interview, and they were fantastic. Sleeping Beauties, the Stephen King and Owen King adaptation, and then the sequel, Refrigerator Full of Heads. You know, for Sleeping Beauties, adapting a Stephen King and Owen King work is a pretty choice assignment. So how excited / nervous were you about doing that?
Yeah, massive thrill, obviously. I'm a big Stephen King fan, so it was nerve-wracking as well. I actually got the call about it maybe a year and a half before we actually sort of sat down to, you know, the contract was sort of signed, and I was able to sit down and start working on it. Takes quite a long time to get anything in the King universe moving, because there are so many facets, and you know, he's got so many people invested and interested, and this was a work with his son. The contract wasn't easy to get finalized, I don't think, but it did happen finally. And it was tough, yeah, because it's a 700-page novel, I think, if memory serves. Big book, and I had to squeeze it into 200 graphic novel pages, 10, 20 page issues, so 200 pages altogether, which meant I had to cut out a lot of the book, a lot of the scenes, had to cut out entire chapters, entire characters. Basically, my aim with the adaptation was to capture the core essence of the book and the themes, the beautiful themes that the book explores, and also maintain the great sense of character that the Kings, and you know, we've all read Stephen King. We've known throughout the many decades that he's been producing work that character is something that he does particularly well, and I definitely wanted to capture that in the adaptation. Wasn't easy, but I did the best job I could, and I'm pretty proud of the way it turned out. You know, IDW put out 2 beautiful volumes. You can buy the first 5 issues in volume 1, and then you get the second 5 issues in volume 2. The artwork's by Alison Sampson. Now I've forgotten her name. She would never forgive me for that. You know, fantastic, beautiful British artist, did amazing work, really brought her own flavor to the project, which was great. And colors by Trina Farrell from Ireland, and the colors are mesmerizing, like surreal almost. So it you know, together, I think we put out a pretty good product, and I know that the Kings were happy with it. So that was good. That was nice to know.
Yeah, that's yeah. Those are beautiful books, and I would say Refrigerator Full of Heads was just 100% pure, over the top, deranged joy. I had more fun reading that than almost anything I've read lately. It was so much fun. I thought all of the sight gags, the gore gags, worked perfectly. I probably laughed out loud about a dozen times.
Great.
It was fantastic, and you know, for all the writers here, when you're doing something like that, if you know, it's like if everything's all gonzo action, it's just not going to work. There's too much noise. So how do you go about structuring something that has all those great, you know, fun moments, but knowing how to structure it and pace it properly and letting it build so that, it's as effective as that was?
yeah, comics are a completely different medium because it's you know, not, it's visual, you know, even the speech is visual, the way it's portrayed, you know, with bold lettering and italics and FX and stuff like that. So you have to I just broke it down like a TV show, you know. You sort of try and start off with you know, you build the pace and you work towards a big finish, and then you leave on the cliffhanger. So yeah, I saw it in my mind as it was 5-6 issues, I think. And I basically saw it in my mind as like a series a TV season. So just try to pace it out that way. And but you're right, you know, it's like anything. It can't be complete action. And it required a deft touch in it. And obviously I was working with Joe Hill on it, and that was great to have him in my corner. He offered some great advice, and we had, you know, it was published by DC Comics, and the editing team there is second to none. And anytime I needed more action, or if the action was too over the top, they were there to you know, rein me in. So it wasn't all me. It was a collaborative effort. And again, you know, working with Tom Fowler, the artist on the book, he had a great eye for portraying action in his artwork. You know, I would write something and he would write to me and say, it would be better if you framed it from this point of view, because you tell what you're doing over 2 panels, you can actually do it in 1 panel here. So it was a real good learning experience, and definitely collaborative. Yeah. Also, when I do a comic book, I sketch the whole thing out myself first, you know, in terms of panels, just to see how it looks on the page and how the action moves. So I do my own kind of like my own sketch work, just to know that I can fit it into 22 pages, and that there's the right mix of you know, slower moments, that the build is right, and then we move forward to the action. Have we lost James? Has he gone?
I'm here. My internet connection dipped a bit, and I was kicked out for a second, but I'm back. I missed some of that, but
it was all great. Trust me.
Yeah, I believe it. You know, and it was, you know, I know interesting for people to see a bit of that process, because it's, you know, a different process than prose. I think we're going to pull up the first scene from Lola on Fire now. And this is the prologue. You'll see what we have here, what Fictionary looks like. And here we go. So you see, this is the working area in Fictionary. So after you've you can certainly write in Fictionary, but after you've drafted your novel, you can pull it up and edit it scene by scene. And Fictionary gives you 38 story elements to check as a framework across character, plot, and setting. So you have things like you know, your opening type, if you open with dialogue or action, and all of these different things you can check if your scene's anchored for point of view and time. And all of these elements you can check to ensure that your scenes are operating the way they should. And then there are also visual insights that you get outside of the working area to see how the story arc is working. You can see things like words per scene, and this is a word map that gives you a quick kind of visual scan of what's happening in the chapter. But
I don't see the word blood there. I thought blood might show up a little bit clearer. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, good. Thank God.
Yeah, that needs to be there. I see gunfire.
Gunfire, blood, bullets. Yep, good.
Paul Mosley. That's a very funny bit.
Yeah.
So with this scene, we talk a lot about first scenes and what an author is trying to accomplish. So I guess probably the two big questions here are, why did you go with a prologue, and why was that so effective here? And what are all the things you wanted to get in about, say Lola, and make her such an immediately striking character?
Well, I guess to answer the last question first, I really wanted to hit the ground running, and I wanted the reader to know that they were in for one hell of a ride the moment they picked up this book, and that they would, we weren't sparing any pages. There's no slow burn going on here. We're in at the deep end, and it's non-stop action from the very first page. I think the opening paragraph is, she's standing there and a car is like heading towards her, and she's gauging whether or not she has time to, to shoot somebody before she moves out of the way. Like everything is, done within split seconds.
Yes.
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
I was asking, there's been some in writer communities, there's always talk about prologues.
Prologues,
should you do
a
prologue? Should you not do a prologue?
Well, Lola's structured a little bit differently, because the prologue is backstory essentially. It's 1994, I think. The actual year escapes me, because it was a few years ago that I read it. But this is Lola as a younger woman in her 20s, and she's going after a mobster called Jimmy Lazzo. And then the main body of the book, after the prologue, we come to the present day. Lola actually disappears for the first half of the book. We don't catch up with her again until the second half of the book. And it's called Lola on Fire, but it's actually it's Brody and Molly's story. Brody and Molly get into trouble with a gangster by the name of Jimmy Lazzo, and in trying to shake him, they led to this former mob enforcer by the name of Lola Bear. And she was definitely and this whole book really is my effort to, I've always loved those one-person army movies, like, John Rambo and John Wick and Jack Reacher, this real badass, just walk into a bar and just clear the bar with a few bullets. And I thought that's such a cool thing to be able to do on film. It's such a shame you can't really do it in novel form, because every other sentence would be he pulled the trigger. How many times can you say, how many different ways can you say he pulled the trigger? The bullet started to fly. It's inherent with problems. One of the biggest problems is that we watch movies like John Wick, and we watch these badass characters who are capable of incredible feats, but in real life, they'd be killed within seconds probably. And fiction, contemporary thrillers, need to be based in some form of reality. So it wasn't just a logistical problem. There was the very real problem of it feeling real, it feeling like it could happen. So Lola on Fire was my attempt to take that John Wick formula, put it into novel form, and also make it believable. And I think I managed to do that. It starts off with this prologue, which serves two purposes. One, it gets us right into the action. It tells the reader exactly what they're going to get. Two, it introduces Lola Bear as this badass character that nobody wants to mess around with. You see what happens if you mess around with it. Even after a few pages, you see what happens if you mess with Lola. And three, it sets up the rest of the story, because it's very much a prologue in every sense of the word, allowing everything that happens afterwards to kind of flow out of this piece. And then you look back at it and you go, oh, okay, that's what all that was for.
Yeah, one thing that's don't mess with Lola. That's one thing. But for the writers here, I think you don't see this, because the next scene picks up, and it's there's a bang 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 number of scenes, and there's just a little scene break. And at the end of the first scene, you see at the beginning of the next scene, Lola takes a breath, and then the action kind of kickstarts again. But I always think that those little breaths, those moment where, you know, just when to pause the action for a second, give the reader a breath, and then kick in again, are so important. And you know, you did that so well right there.
But it's kind of like filmic in a way. You see that in the movies all the time, where, you know, they'll clear the room and then they'll just be walking down, you know, a corridor or a hallway or something, and you know that someone's going to jump out of them at some point. Just take a breath, reload, wipe the sweat off his brow, whatever it is needs to do, just for him to catch his breath, the character, he or she, whoever it is, and she in the case of Lola, and also for the audience to catch their breath as well. And I know the part where you started, the part you're talking about, and the action kicks off again with the sentence, "Then Jimmy came at her with a flamethrower," which again, we're just straight back into the mix.
Yes.
And just when you think you're over it, and like the action is kind of winding down, Jimmy Lazzo comes out of nowhere with a flamethrower. So again, it's just that filmic element to it that I wanted to read it to catch their breath, but not too much.
Well, we want to see if anyone here has any questions, and if we have time, I'd love to hear your you know, you mentioned John Wick and some other films, but you know, the films that you really look to for I don't know, maybe inspiration, or to that get you going.
Sure, yeah. Are we taking questions first?
Yeah, do we have some, Shane, do we have some questions?
No questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to ask, now's the time. Oh, actually, I think Kaylin did ask a question. One moment. Kaylin asked, so do you prefer paper to pencil versus digital drawing when you do your sketches?
Well, God, let me put this into some context. When I say I draw or I sketch stuff out, like, I am not an artist. Like, it's stick figures and like round pie faces with eyes. Like, there's no detail here. It just gives me an idea of where the camera is in that particular scene. So yes, it's a no. I don't know if is it in this? No, I don't think it is in this book. I got some oh, it is actually. Look, you're lucky. You get to see some of my very excellent drawings. I don't know if you can see some of this stuff.
Nice.
It's quality
Love
stuff. This is a hand reaching out of the ground, or wherever it is, out of the water, I think.
Huh.
So yeah, I couldn't sell that, but when I see it, it tells me what I need to write for that panel. So yeah, paper, I think. You know, I find the digital really sort of messes with my my muse a little bit.
Yeah.
I can't quite recreate the same, you know, element, the same level of art on screen. That's sarcasm for all my American friends.
Well, and we're up at the end of the half hour, but what's the most fun movie experience you've had recently? What's been your favorite recent movie?
I'm looking forward to John Wick 4. I know that. Do you know, I really enjoyed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And it's a couple of years old now, but I thought that was tremendous, really good. Love the dialogue in Tarantino's movies, and you know, for a lot of the time, nothing really happens in that film. You find out a lot with Tarantino, and then first time I watched it, I thought, oh, that was okay, it wasn't great. And the second time I watched it, it blew me away.
Yeah,
some films, I think they're sort of layered in a way that you need to see them 2 times, maybe even 3 times, to get the full effect, to get the director's intention. So yeah, once you're able to fill in those blanks, it was really great, really good. And I saw, along with everybody else, just before Oscar season, I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah,
and that was amazing. The action scenes in that were incredible. I mean, such an imaginative movie. Brilliant performances as well. Just terrific.
Yeah, it was. And I love seeing Michelle Yeoh get a lot of accolades for that.
Yeah, great film. Yeah, really good.
Hi, all. Can I ask just one very quick question?
Yeah, go
Hi,
ahead.
Rio. Hi, Rio.
Hey.
I just wondered about the different disciplines, you know, the short and long form fiction, and then attempting a comic book script, and that sort of transition. Like, it's something I've been thinking about for a while, and like right now, to me, it's completely insane, and I just wondered how you how you made that move. Did a lot of support, or did you just try and fail? I mean, obviously there's try and fail, but you know.
Yeah, well, necessity is the mother of invention. When you're tasked with something to do, you find a way to do it. With Sleeping Beauties, it was my first comic. I did actually do a comic book script. I don't know, I'd say 10 years ago now, but it was a 12-pager for Chris Ryle, who's on for Zombies versus Robots annual, and that gave me just a little bit of experience, but it wasn't enough to go into adapting an 800-page Stephen King novel, you know. So I was a little bit nervous. I'd never really done anything like that before, but I had Chris Ryle again from IDW was in my corner, who sleeps, dreams comics, and I just felt that he would be my right-hand man, and I could go to him in confidence and say, dude, how do you do this? How do you even describe this in comic form? But unfortunately, Chris left like a month into the project. He left IDW, so I was left without a corner man, and I was flying solo. So yeah, it was terrifying. But like I said, you find a way to do it. You get it done. Certainly, I wasn't going to turn the project down because I didn't feel like I had the experience to do it. I got through, and it's the same with. I think it's the same with anything. Like, you don't know how good you are at something until you try it. So why not try it? Why not give it a spin? And you're right, try and fail, but also try and get better every time you fail.
Of course.
Yeah, so I didn't really have a lot of room to fail with Sleeping Beauties, but it worked out okay, actually. Bizarrely. That's a good question, because yeah, I think a lot of writers start out with the short form, writing short stories, and then they take on, and a lot of writers stay writing short stories. They have no interest in writing a full-length novel, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then most people sort of graduate to a 20,000 word, 25,000 word novella length piece before tackling that novel for the first time. It feels, I think, like a mountain to climb for anybody who hasn't done it yet, who wants to do it. But really, novels are just big short stories. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. You sit down, you start writing, and you have as much fun as possible. And if you're having fun writing it, then invariably the reader's going to have fun too. And that carries through with that fun element carries through with comic scripts and everything else you might want to write, whether it's an introduction to a friend's novella, which I'm going to be working on soon for Tim Leben, or whether it's you're doing an interview for some German publication, which is what I'm doing now as well. So always challenged by new things, but never afraid to give it a shot.
Thanks for that. And you never know; those sketches could be worth a few quid in some years to come.
No doubt about it. Are you kidding me? Have you seen the quality? Let me show you again. Look at that. Incredible stuff.
I was going to say for fans, but all right. Thanks for
Only
that.
when I look at these and compare it to Tom's final, it's quite different, I would say.
Thanks for that.
My pleasure. Thank you. Good question.
Well, that was a fantastic talk. We'll be back in another month. We'll have an announcement soon for the next writer up on our Seen It First series. And Rio, thank you so much for coming by tonight. For everyone, go out, read some Rio Youers. You will not be disappointed. And Rio, it was an honor. Thank you again for being here tonight.
My pleasure. I will just tell you, listeners, real quickly, that Lola on Fire is actually available for $2.99 right now on all of your e-reader devices. So, you know, what are you waiting for? Let's go. Look,
Yeah.
one of them's already left. Gone to buy the book. Don't blame them. $2.99. What a purchase.
That's great. Thank you everyone for being here tonight.